for webinar with us with the BACD. My name's Chris McConnell. If you don't know, I am president-elect. I'll be president next year of the BACD. And the series of webinars that we've put together during this COVID time is really kind of a good member benefit, and we are doing this to try to kind of help out in these hard times until we can get back to normal, which hopefully will be soon. So there's been a series already of webinars, and these are all recorded sessions, and they are on the website for members to access. So you can come back at any point and access these, which I have been doing, and I have found is very, very helpful because there's so much information that come out in these webinars, and I know that's not going to be any different tonight with Justin. The stuff that we're going to cover tonight is, I think, really, really important. Justin Leigh, as I said, he's a phenomenal guy who works with many big national, international dental companies, and he works with in how to engage with your team, and importantly, how to engage with patients, how to kind of educate your team to get a better workflow, and obviously with your patients, how they can understand what you're doing to engage with bigger uptakes. He's an active practitioner of neurolinguistic programming, NLP, so I'm sure he'll program as well tonight. And I can see already it's going to be a really enthusiastic, full-on session. So thanks very much, and I'll hand you over.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Chris. I'm just going to share my screen. If you can give me a thumbs up to let me know that you can see it, okay?
That's all good, yeah.
Excellent. So first of all, thank you so much to the BACD for inviting me to speak with you this evening. I'm absolutely delighted to do that. Tonight we've got an hour, and I'm going to talk to you about a principle or some principles around patient-centred solutions. And as Chris rightly says, it's about communication and the communication model, how we can take an approach that transforms communication with patients and practice teams. And we have some learning outcomes. So just to let you know what we're going to have as outcomes by the end of tonight's session, you'll have a better understanding of the market forces that are fueling growth in the industry right now. Not just dentistry, it's fair to say, but certainly dentistry are seeing some incredible impacts on market forces fueling growth. We're going to look at some principles and practices to better understand patients' and team members' needs. We're going to look at a communication structure that I think you're really going to enjoy and like, that's going to ensure more positive conversations with everybody that you use the model with. And then we'll look at some key skills to engage patients and the practice teams more effectively. So that's what we've got in store over the next 55 minutes or so. And there will be a chance to ask questions at the end. I am happy for a copy of the slides to be circulated, a PDF. So if you would like a copy, please just contact Susie and she will send that to you directly. And at the end, there's a personalized opportunity for people who have attended this evening, BACD members. So I'll just give you a quick précis of my history. Chris gave me an excellent introduction, so thank you, Chris. So my name's Justin Leigh. I am an accredited executive coach. I am the founder of Focus for Growth. We are a leadership and sales training company, and we specialize in the dental industry. Now, I've got, I don't like to say it, but over 30 years experience in selling, influencing, both in and out of dentistry. And in the last 3 years since I founded my coaching and consulting company, which really specializes in helping business teams to grow more rapidly, I've been privileged and continue to be privileged to work with some of the most, I guess, iconic dental companies in the industry. And really am privileged to work with some senior leaders and business teams. And what we really look at is this kind of challenge that a lot of business teams face, and it's fair to say practice teams face as well. You know, teams that are a little unsure about what they're doing, the approach they're taking. People who perhaps struggle with poor performance. Sometimes they can feel overwhelmed, and that leads to a real inconsistency of performance and results. And through the models and the sessions that we run, we get them to a point where they feel much more capable, they feel more confident, the performance becomes more consistent, and that is done through really effective communication by leaders and by teams. So that's what we're really looking at. We'll look at how that works tonight. So before I get into the content, and I've told you a little bit about me, I would love to know a little bit about you. So I'd like us to run a poll. So I'm just going to launch the first poll. I'd love to understand who we have on the call tonight. So which best describes your role? Are you a practice owner or a partner? Are you an associate dentist? Are you a treatment coordinator, practice manager? Maybe you're a dental technician. Maybe you're a senior dental nurse. Maybe you're none of the above and I've misjudged it, and in which case, pop a note into the comments and let me know what your role would best be described as. So just give us a moment for the people on the call to answer the poll, then I'll share the results. So we have about half of the people have voted. So if you haven't voted yet and you want to, please just put your answer into the poll. Okay, great. Thank you. I'm going to share that with you. Okay, great. So we have, let me show you the results. We have 20% are practice owners or partners, and the remainder are associate dentists. So thank you, everybody, for taking part in that poll. Appreciate that. Let me stop sharing that result. So that gives me a good indication of the kind of content that we'll cover based on who's in our audience tonight. So let's talk about the market forces that are fueling growth right now. So we've had a year like no other in the last 12 months. We know that. We've had, very little entertainment, little opportunity to go to cultural events, no sporting events. Many of us have wanted to go on holidays and can't. We haven't been able to eat out at restaurants, and that's just starting to open back up now. And, even people who have budgets for things like, luxury items like cars, we haven't been traveling and we haven't had the need to make those investments or spend that money. And so what's happened as a result of that is that Britain has become a nation of savers. We have UK household savings have hit a record high. And I don't know if you've seen this statistic, but previous record high was at 14.4% of UK adults and households had savings, and that's double. We're at 29.1%. So the theory from the Office for National Statistics is that actually people have never had more wealth. They've never felt more wealthy right now. It's a really positive thing for the economy and for us in the dental industry. Now you combine that with the Zoom effect, or the Zoom boom as people are calling it. And what's happening, and you'll know this already, I'm sure, but many professionals are working from home. They are on Zoom calls, and one of the few things, or one of the rare things that happens when we're in person is that we see ourselves. We only see ourselves if we catch a reflection in a mirror or a window. When we're on Zoom, we are constantly in our own eye line, and it started to really bug a lot of people. And as a result, more and more patients, or adult population, are looking to cosmetic treatments, in particular dental treatments. And I don't know if you know who this chap here is on the right-hand side of the screen, but this is Joe Hogan. Joe Hogan is the CEO of Align Technology. And Align Technology shares, the share price for Align Technology from March last year to May this year has grown by an impressive 301%. And if you hear Joe Hogan talk about some of the factors that are fueling that growth, one of the significant factors is this Zoom boom and the number of patients that are seeking out Invisalign treatment because of this phenomenon that they're seeing themselves all the time, and they want to improve the way they look. The other factor that is interesting, a dentistry article showed that 1 in 10 adults now is seeking cosmetic dental treatment. So we should be seeing a real influx of patient inquiries. We should be seeing a buoyancy in our businesses, and there should be growth. And I guess it gives us a good benchmark to start to think about our own patient populations. So we have the components for exponential growth in our businesses. But we must be able to inspire confidence and to be able to communicate effectively with patients, and our team must be able to do that in order for us to transfer all of that positive intent into revenue growth and into growth in treatments for our patients. And communication is not only important for growth, but it's a critical factor for us in dentistry. Now, I'll teach you a couple of things that I'm sure you know, but I'll be reinforcing for you. David Lauder, who is the dental legal advisor for the DDU, explains in many articles, but one of the articles in Dentistry magazine, he talked about communication problems are the most common causes of complaints against dental practices, and they account for around 1/3 of complaints notified to the DDU. So they can be transferred or identified back. Root cause is communication from the practice and members of the practice team with patients. So communication is vital, and so vital that the GDC have it as principle number 2 in their standards for the dental team, that we must communicate effectively with patients. We need to give patients the information they need in a way they can understand so that they can make informed decisions. And we may think we're doing that, but perhaps there is an opportunity for improvement. So tonight we're going to look at how we do that. So I'm going to run my second poll, which is around communication. So I'd love to know, how would you rate your communication with your patients and your team? So I've got an excellent, I've got a very good, I have an okay, I've got a not sure, I've got a poor, and I've thrown a terrible in there just for good measure. So I'd be interested to hear what you think about your communication with your teams. Thank you. Great. Okay, so we've got some good responses there. Thank you, everybody. If there's anybody that's just waiting to vote, I'll give you another 5 seconds if anybody hasn't voted. Okay, excellent. Good. Okay, let me share those results. So what we've got, we have 43% of us saying very good, excellent, and confidence around communication is as important as the communication. 57% saying okay. So some room for improvement if we want to improve, if it's an area of focus. So thank you for that, and thank you for your honesty. None of these results will be shared outside of the recorded webinar, so no need to worry, and it was all anonymous. So thank you for being honest, I appreciate it. So let's talk about performance, high performance, and communication is a key part of high performance. Now, I'm going to share 3 principles with you that very quickly, that again are straightforward and could be seen as obvious, but very often are overlooked. So there's 3 foundations of high performance. The first of those foundations is psychology and mindset. So it's what we believe we are capable of. And think about us, but also think about our teams around us. So psychology as a primary layer. If we believe we can do something, we will be able to do it. We will find a way to be able to do it. If we don't believe something is possible for us for whatever reason, or we think what we're doing is working as it is, we will continue to do it, or we will restrict ourselves from improving. And as leaders in our practices or in our businesses, we have to recognize that sometimes some of the challenges we face with our teams and even with patients can actually be traced back to psychology rather than behavior and what's going on at the root cause. So after psychology comes behavior and skills. So in terms of high performance, we have to prime ourselves and have the right mindset first. Once we have the right mindset, we then have to nurture skills that we know are the vital skills for performance in our specialist field. And understanding what those skills are really important. We're going to talk about communication skills specifically tonight, but this could be related to any other area of high performance. And then finally, once we have the right psychology, mindset, beliefs, and positivity in place, we get the skills and we start to develop and become more confident. Then we have to find the right structure, systems, and process that enable us to then reproduce those results over and over again so that we can start to accelerate and exponentially see growth of ourselves and our business. So really important we get these 3 key principles in place across our practice teams. Now, as we look towards communication with patients, it's interesting to understand where our patients are and where we may be at any point in time in the journey that the patient goes through in their interaction with us and our practice team. And I'm just going to walk you through a very tried and tested, a very well-known principle in marketing called the AIDA principle. Now, what the AIDA principle states is that it starts with whoever it is, the patient in this instance, being unaware either that we are able to provide a service, or that something is wrong. Maybe they haven't had a diagnosis yet, or that we are able to do what we are able to do. Maybe we are an aesthetic specialist and they don't realize, or we may be able to offer a service that they hadn't recognized was possible or necessary. They move from unaware to being attentive to the opportunity or the problem. Okay, so we go from unaware to attentive. Now, just because our attention is drawn, it doesn't mean that at this point we will decide or act. The next stage in the process is to become interested. So we are attentive first, then we become interested. Now, recognizing that these are stages, and these stages don't necessarily happen in one sitting, in one conversation, they happen over time, is really important. And once someone's interested, they start to know about the topic. Once somebody has become interested and they move on from there, they go to the desire stage. So this is when they start to think, actually, there is something I want. I desire this treatment, this change, this improvement. And they'll start to form this liking of the situation. And then finally, they will take action. And they will take action in the right direction once they've gone through all of these stages. And really importantly, that they trust the provider of that service to give them what they need, the result they are looking for. Not the process, not the treatment, the result, because that's ultimately what we all are looking for, is the result, not the treatment or the experience. So this is really important for us to recognize, because there'll be patients that go through our practice time and time again, and it may be that it's not the first time that they talk to us about a treatment option, or talk to us about an issue they're facing. And you may be thinking, well, this patient's talked to me about this more than once, but still not acted. And the reason for that will be because they haven't gone through this process. They haven't recognized that not only are they attentive to it, but they need to be interested to improve it. They need to create desire to improve it. And only then will they then move to the next stage, which is action. And we can help patients to go through this process more effectively by the way we communicate. So in terms of communication, we are going to look at a model. And now I love this quote. There's a guy called William Edwards Deming. I don't know if you've heard of him, but William Edwards Deming was the godfather of process manufacturing and automotive assembly. And in his later career, he became a business consultant to some of the most iconic companies on the planet. And he transformed the way that they were producing product, producing results, and the way that their whole systemization of business worked. And he had this famous phrase: if you can't describe what you are doing as a process, whatever it is, you don't know what you're doing. And what he was really saying was, without understanding the processes we go through, and without being able to either describe it or document it, then we really can't reproduce the same level of results that we should be able to. And that is something we do in practice in dentistry, but perhaps not something we think about in our communication in dentistry. So we'll look at a couple of models that will help us improve in this area. So the first one, I'm going to talk you through this model. We're not going to go into this in detail tonight, but I'll talk you through the framework. So this is a model that I use in business with many organizations, including dental companies. And I've reframed this model so that it becomes applicable to a dental organization, a dental practice, or a dental group. So what we've got here is a 4-blocker. And on the x-axis, we have the dentist and we have the dental team. And on the left-hand side, we have internal, what's going on internally for us and our team, and then externally, what's going on outside of just us and our internal team. So the first block is about managing ourselves. It's about ensuring we have the right self-belief, a positive self-image, that we are clinically and from a business perspective able to lead ourselves and our teams. It's about being able to communicate, build relationships, have authority and provide quality in the service that we provide and the leadership that we provide. And it's about self-confidence. The next stage is about what happens externally. So as leaders of our practices, what's the practice's readiness to be able to serve patients effectively? What's our brand and our image like? What are our patient care pathways like, and how clear are they? How clear is the patient information that we offer? How well are we presenting ourselves clinically and professionally? And are we creating the right time and space to give patients quality and a quality experience? Then the dental team. This is about beliefs, attitudes, and behavior. Are they clinically, do they have the right level of clinical expertise? Are they communicating effectively with patients? Are they engaging the patients and genuinely showing a caring approach at all times? Are they demonstrating professionalism, and are they taking a consultative approach to a patient conversation and towards the patient experience? And then finally, we have the overall patient experience. So are we operating in a way that is truly patient-centered? Does the patient feel calm and considered when they are in our practice and interacting with any member of our team? Is the welcome warm, friendly, polite at all times? Are we service oriented towards the customer, or the patient, I should say? And what's our communication journey like? How well does the customer feel informed as they go through our care pathways with us? And there's a model here. I've gone through it incredibly quickly, but there's a model here that if we really apply it thoroughly and comprehensively to a practice, it really does start to elevate our thinking and our team's thinking about the service that we provide and how we become a higher performing practice. So I share that with you as a frame of reference for now, and something that we can come back to at some point. So that's the strategic model for the practice. Now, when it comes to consultative conversations, and you'll see here I've dropped the word selling in, and you'll probably have one of two reactions to that. You'll either think, okay, so I can live with that. Your other reaction might be, I really don't want to be selling anything to anyone. And that's a common response. It's a response that I had before I moved into selling, and actually while I was early in my sales career and before I learned how to consultatively communicate and have conversations. Let's talk through the model, and we can get to that in Q&A if we need to. So thinking about this model, it starts at the heart of our model with the relationship between the patient and the dentist, or the person that is dealing with the patient, whether that's a TCO, practice manager, head nurse, whoever it is. But it's about the relationship that we form with the patient. Once we have that relationship in place, what we do is we have to show the patient that we are credible and authoritative. And the way to do that is to lead the conversation with insight. So be able to share some key insights that we have because of, one, our knowledge, skills, and experience, but two, because of the continuing improvement in our practice and because of the other patients that we're continually treating. To be able to share insights with a patient that help them to see the impact that could potentially make for them and their own treatment or their own aesthetics and sometimes function can be really powerful. So we lead the conversation with some form of insight that has a positive impact on the patient. Now, once we've shared some insights, what we then have to understand is, okay, this insight's interesting for the patient, but what do they need? So we have to go into what we call this needs discovery stage. And that's about truly understanding the patient. And we're going to look at these three stages this evening. We're going to look at relationships, we're going to look at insights, and we're going to look at needs discovery. Once we have the needs discovery stage complete, we understand what the patient's desires, wants, needs, and priorities are. Only then should we start to talk to them about a potential solution. And that solution should be a discussion. And it's a discussion rather than a pitch or a presentation, because when we pitch or present to people, we feel like we're selling. And that's why we get really uncomfortable in these situations. But after we understand what the patient needs, then we're in a position to be able to have a really valuable discussion about what the potential solutions and options are for the patient. Now, throughout that discussion, we'll come to an understanding of which direction the patient would like to choose. And at that point, we can make a proposal. So we say, well, based on what we've discussed, my proposal is, and then we test that with the patient, and the patient they might say yes, they might say no, but whatever that does, it guides us to a point where we get to agreement. And you'll notice on the model that at this stage, the last two arrows are multi-directional. So if we get to a proposal and the patient says, that's not really what I was expecting or not really what I was thinking, then we have to retrace our steps and go back to questioning, listening, understanding what they need, and have another discussion about an alternative solution. And at that point, we can come forward and make a proposal that we will get agreement from the patient on. Once we have that agreement in place, then we initiate action. Okay, let's talk about the treatment pathway. Let's book in the next consultation. Let's look at next steps. It's only after we've got to this point that we would initiate that action. And at that point, it feels incredibly natural to do so because the patient wants what we've agreed. So it becomes a really positive experience for us as clinicians and practitioners, and for the patient. So it should never feel as if it's difficult or clunky or forced, because we're following a structure that guides the patient through what is a consultative process. And that could be the end of our discussion. But what I encourage a lot of professionals to do is at the end of each of these consultations, just to take a moment to reflect and ask ourselves some simple questions about what went well, what did we learn through that discussion about the patient, about communicating, and what might we need to change about our approach in future. And when we do that, we start to seek out best practice and we start to elevate our own standards and performance, and that enables us to continually improve our process. And that's really what this cycle is about. It's not just about being able to consultatively have conversations and communicate. It's about this ongoing process of improvement. So that's the model. Let's deep dive into a couple of areas. The first is the relationship. So we have to have a relationship, and you will have heard of the term rapport, and you may know a lot about it. So I'll cover this quite quickly. What is rapport? So here it is. Rapport is the ability to relate to others in a way that creates a level of trust and understanding. And it really is the foundation of a positive relationship. Okay, so that's the dictionary definition. But really what it means for us when we're dealing with other people is that we will not buy or commit to or from people we don't like. So if I don't like you, if you haven't created an established rapport with me, I will not commit to you. I'll maybe say, well, let me think about it, or I'm not sure, or I need some time. Okay, or I may just not come back to you. And rapport is absolutely fundamental to all of our relationships, but our ability, most importantly, to influence and engage other people. And the reason it's important is because it enables you as dentists and your patients to unconsciously gain agreement and acceptance. That word's really important, unconsciously. It means we don't think about it rationally. It means we sense and intuit that it's the right thing to do. And it's critical for engagement, influence, commitment, communication, and ultimately high performance in any field. We have to be able to connect with other people because it's very rare that we can achieve things on our own. So when does rapport happen? So rapport happens when we get a sense that we like somebody. Okay, so we don't necessarily say it to ourselves, but we feel that we like somebody. And it happens in one of four situations. It happens when we think somebody is like us. So rapport is all about us as the recipient. Okay, so if we think someone is the same as us or like us, rapport will be established. Secondly, if we think somebody is interested in us. So if we think somebody is interested in us, we will unconsciously and naturally be in rapport. Thirdly, if it's somebody who we think is like who we want to be. So they're like, oh, I aspire to be that kind of person. Okay, so that will naturally create rapport. In fact, it's one of the fastest ways to build rapport. And then fourth is that they are somebody that we respect and admire. Okay, so they are the four key reasons why rapport is established. And when you think about those four, there is only one that we can absolutely guarantee 100% of the time. And I'm sure you know, but I'm going to tell you, it's number two. We can always be interested in other people, which enables us to always build rapport, no matter who it is, no matter how difficult it is. So I'm going to talk about, when we think about rapport and this unconscious piece, let's break down the communication mix. There was this piece of work done by Dr. Albert Mehrabian. And what Albert Mehrabian found, his research team found, was that when we are on the receiving end of communication from another person, the way that we interpret that communication as a complete mix, 7% of what we take on board are the spoken words. 38% is the voice, the tone, the pitch, the pace, the way the words are delivered. The remaining 55% is body language. It's what we see and sense from the other person. And really fascinating is that the 7% is conscious, the rational mind thinking about it. The remaining 93% is unconscious. And we said rapport is unconscious, largely unconscious. So we don't think, are we in rapport? Do we like this person? We sense it at an unconscious level. So it's really, really important that we get this understood and that we utilize it effectively. So there are three things we can do to accelerate and deepen rapport with virtually anyone. The first is that because it's unconscious and because most of it is happening without the words that are actually spoken, if we want to connect with someone else simply by smiling, saying to ourselves, show warmth and sincerity, that will be transmitted and received by the other person. So just starting out with that intent will generate rapport. Next, we know that we should be listening. We should be interested and curious in the other person. And we do these two things, and a rapport is pretty much guaranteed with anybody. And then the third thing we can do is an NLP principle, which Chris mentioned at the start. And there's a really well-known principle in NLP, and it's called match, pace, lead. What it means is that we start by matching the other person. We smile, we offer warmth and sincerity, we listen and we're curious, and then we start to increase the pace of the relationship. We don't have to match the other person anymore. We then start to be able to lead and guide their decisions and the conversation. And that's what the real key here is. Remember that we shouldn't be starting to lead that conversation right from the outset. We should establish the rapport first, then move to the leadership position. So I'll invite you just to think about, you may have patients, you may have team members that you find that are more difficult to connect with than others. So just start to think about what changes might you need to make to your approach, because the only person we can ever change in a relationship is ourselves. That will enable us to connect with somebody else that we might want to really focus in on. So I'll invite you to do that. Okay, so that's the relationship. So that's starting rapport, deepening relationships. What about the first stage of our process then? So our first stage of our process is called insight and impact. And really what this means is that when we're in a crowded marketplace, when there's lots of competition, when there are lots of other options for patients, if we just fit in the same as everybody else, that's pretty much failure. We have to be able to stand out. And if we don't stand out, we become invisible like everybody else in the marketplace. And one of the ways we can do that is just start to look for insights. Start to look for insights that are relevant to our patients. And I did some research in advance of our conversation today. There's some really interesting things that are available in the marketplace. So I'm sure you've seen some of this, but a dentistry article, half of Brits stress about their smiles, the dental dilemma. Half of British adults hate smiling because their teeth are in poor shape. When a patient is talking to you about wanting to improve their smile, to be able to say, you know, it's interesting because half of the British public feel the same way. And all of a sudden, the patient feels as if it's something that they should be addressing because I'm part of a growing group of people who want to address the issue. There's some interesting information about, you know, what we notice about other people. You know, when you first meet somebody, the 47% of people say the first thing they notice is the smile. It's instantly the highest recognition of, you know, warmth from somebody else. And looking at, okay, over time, as we get older, which treatments, what is it that stands the test of time? 45% of people say the smile is timeless in terms of being able to withstand, you know, aging and any other of life's experiences. So, you know, really helping patients to understand, yes, this is an important decision to make. So there's a lot. I won't go through all of these, but even things like, you know, if anybody's doing Invisalign or any of those Invisalign treatments or invisible aligners, you know, Invisalign in the last week announced they've hit 10 million smiles. That's an incredible amount of clear aligners, and to be able to share that with patients, to be able to, you know, almost celebrate you're one of 10 million people who are making this incredible decision to improve their smiles, actually starts to really help people to make positive, clear decisions around their oral health. So that's insights. So start to think about what insights could you be sharing, gathering, and helping your patients to understand. So we start that conversation with an insight. So the patient sees us as credible, authoritative. They think, wow, this person really knows their field. They're a specialist, and we like to deal with specialists. Then we move to a discussion about discovering needs. And we can only discover needs by slowing down the conversation and questioning and listening. Now we're going to look at listening briefly. So listening is really difficult. And I know it sounds like an odd statement to make, but listening is difficult. And there's a number of reasons why. These statistics are by the International Listening Association. And what it shows is that we speak at between 125 and 175 words per minute. We listen at close to 450 words per minute. So already we can listen 3 times as fast as the other person can speak. We think at between 2,000 and 3,000 words per minute, if you could put it into words. And what that means is that normally we absorb somewhere between 17 to 25% of what we hear. So listening is tricky. It's not straightforward and it's not natural. And an interesting fun fact, it is the #1 reason marriages fail, not being listened to. So what's the answer? The answer is to develop active listening. Now, when we actively listen, it's important. One of the things that we do is we start to repeat key words that the other person uses in a patient consultation, the words that the patient uses, not all of the words, just key words that are important, that really come across and stand out. And what that does is it acknowledges that we're listening, and it reinforces to the patient that we're understanding what they need. It reinforces that we are being curious and that we're interested in them, so the relationship deepens further. And then finally, we summarize at the end, just to be clear that we've understood everything. And when we get into this habit of summarizing what the patient's told us, it forces us to become more attentive and it improves our listening skills. And when we listen more intently, we become more influential. So it increases our ability to influence. And that wouldn't be the only reason we did it, but it is a really interesting byproduct of becoming more attentive to the other person. We become more influential. Now, when we think about influence, most of the time we think it's about being pushy or manipulative. Actually, true influence is about becoming more attentive to the other person. So it's an interesting anomaly and probably opposite to what most of us would think on the surface. So developing active listening can be really, really important. So once we learn to listen and we're summarizing and we're repeating key words, then what we have to consider is how do we ensure that the questions we ask are as effective as possible. Now, questioning and listening is a topic we literally could talk about in a full one-day seminar, but I've shared a key principle around active listening, which will really help. If you aren't doing that today, please pick that up as a key principle to use from here on in. The second thing I'd like to talk about is a really simple principle for questioning. So how do we get people to open up and talk to us? Now, what we need to understand is that there are a couple of different types of questions, that we're more than a couple, but the two that we're going to talk about are open questions and closed questions. Now, when we ask closed questions, we'll find that the conversation's stilted. People will answer yes or no. Really, really fascinating that in most of the work I do with clients, with teams, with business people, with dental teams, most people automatically default to closed questions. And what happens then is that they end up in this conversation with somebody else where it just feels really stilted and they don't understand why. They actually think the other person could be being evasive or awkward. And actually, it's the quality of the question that's being asked that's causing the disconnect. So if you remember one thing about questioning, please remember this. Open questions start with the word what or how. I'm going to say that again because it's really, really vital. Open questions start with the words what or how. And let me give you an example. If you meet somebody that you haven't seen, or you're greeting someone in the practice or a patient, and you say, "Hello, are you all right?" Which is what most people say. "All right, are you okay? Are you okay?" "Yes, I'm well, thanks," is normally how it finishes. If you said, "How are you? How have you been? What have you been up to?" Now, you may not always have time to ask those questions, but the difference in the structure of the question, even though it sounds the same, the difference is completely transformational to the answer that you'll get. So if you just start to recognize when you're asking questions, if you ever think, why is this conversation not flowing? Check your questions. You will be asking closed questions. I can almost guarantee it. And remember this principle, what or how. Now, when I share this principle with people, they say, yeah, well, what about the why question? Why is an open question, right? It absolutely is. So why is an open question. The challenge with the why question is that why as a frame for a question triggers a defense mechanism in almost everybody. And the reason for that is because we are asked the question why in childhood in almost every situation in a negative context. So why did you do that? Or why didn't you do that? And if we say to a patient, well, why haven't you got this treatment in place yet? Why have you never had it done? The first thing that happens is they start to justify their position. So we must be really careful about using the question why. It's the same when we're managing team members or leading teams. If we say, why haven't you done this? People roll out the excuses. If we say, okay, so what's it going to take to get this accomplished? Or what's got in the way? Or what needs to happen next? We can transfer any why question into a what or how question. It reduces any defensiveness from anybody. So really, really important to think about this questioning structure, and very simple to do so too. Now, there is an opportunity to use why. There are two ways when you could. So the first is in reverse. You're thinking, what is he talking about? What does that mean? What it means is that if you want someone to justify a position, so maybe you're talking to a patient and you don't ask them why they haven't got the treatment, you might say to them, so, why would you want to go ahead with this treatment? So what they'll then do is defend their option to do it. So you move them in the right direction by asking the question in a way that prompts defensiveness positively. So I hope that makes sense. Happy to go into that a bit more if we needed to. The second opportunity to use the why question is when you want to unlock desire or passion from somebody. So you might say, why is this so important to you? Why does it mean so much to you? Why would it be, so transformational for you to have this result? And then people will open up really positively, really dynamically in a way that supports the conversation. But be really careful about how we use the why question. Okay, so that is the model. That's the model. I'm just going to talk you quickly. We've got 5 minutes and then we'll go to questions. I'm just going to talk you through a program. So I run lots of structured business, sales, influencing, consulting programs with customers. Many of them, if not most of them, are with dental industry companies in my business practice. And what I've been asked to do is to pull together a program that would be more aimed at dental professionals rather than dental industry. So I am in the process of launching a program, building it as we speak. It's coming soon. It will launch on the 2nd of September. So I'll share some details with you. It will actually be for dental professionals. So it'll be for anybody who is, I guess, consulting and selling to patients or providing treatment options and services to patients. Now, it won't be for everybody. We'll be looking at a specific cohort, maximum of 30 people as part of the initial program launch. And I don't know if you've had experience of this, but when I was in, when I've been in lots of different organizations, and I have to say, up until last year, many of the programs I either attended or ran were a little bit like this cartoon. You would turn up to a program that might be 2 days, it might be 3 days, and I would learn so much information. It was literally like trying to drink from a fire hose. And then at the end, you'd kind of get, okay, let's go away and now put this into practice. And trying to remember everything from 2 or 3 days intensive training is really, really difficult. And so the program that I'm designing, based on the work I've done with other clients over the last 12 months, this is not how I'll be doing it from here on in. The way that the program will work is that we'll use this principle of compounding. So the program will start with a platform that we will call the scorecard. I'm building this at the moment. So it'll be a diagnostic scorecard where you can go in and answer some questions. And at the end of that question structure, you'll get a report that says, based on what you've answered, here are some of the areas that could be useful for you to start to think about building your practice and your communication skills. That will enable you to review some priority areas for your development around consulting and communicating with patients and your team. And once you've done that, and if you want to enroll in the program, you would be assigned an accountability partner. So I'll be recommending either people come in in pairs from the practice, or if they're coming on their own, I will assign an accountability partner, someone that will work with you, that's on the program and is learning at the same time. There will be 10 fortnightly Zoom workshops. I'll show you the structure of those workshops in a moment. They'll each be 90 minutes and we'll go through key pieces of content. There'll be a private WhatsApp group where we can talk about some of the priorities as we go through the program, where there'll be a support network for people who are working through the content all at the same time and trying to apply it in practice and in their working lives. And then beyond that, we'll have a series of monthly coaching masterminds. So after the 10 fortnightly Zoom workshops, if it's something that people want to continue with, there'll be an option for a monthly mastermind group as well. So here's the 10 sessions. We'll be looking, you'll see that this is almost a replica of the model that I've explained to you this evening. So we'll look at mindset and psychology. We'll look at how we prepare the practice team. We'll look at relationships. We'll look at crafting insights, discovering needs, the solutions discussion, proposing treatment solutions or treatment options with confidence, handling objections, initiating action, and reflection and coaching. So it's a really comprehensive 20-week program. So the price of the program, just for your information, will be $1,495 plus VAT. The BACD webinar attendees from this evening will have a promotional price of $1,245 plus VAT, or any BACD members. At this point, because it's not starting until September, if you'd like to register interest, please do, but you can't sign up just yet. We can register interest. In terms of keeping it really simple, firstly, if you are interested, please just set up a new email. If you send an email to my marketing coordinator, a lady called Sarah Davey, she's ever so nice. Just put Sarah Davey at Focus for Growth, that's with a number 4.co.uk in the toolbar. And to keep it really simple, if you just put something like, I'd like to be inspired, the model is called Inspire, as you know, hit send. Sarah will be in touch with details and be very happy to help you out. No commitment necessary, but if you are interested, just drop Sarah a note. So before we go to questions, final thought from me, final thought. So I'd encourage everyone on the call this evening just to really start thinking about your aspirations for your practice, for your business. Start to think about dreaming big. Start to think about how you become a leader in your field. And you know, a lot of the work I do with clients, yes, it's important, it's valuable, it's about helping with communication and influence. But what we really try to do is inspire something bigger. Right? You know, inspiring the mission that I'm on, I guess, you know, the bigger picture for me is inspiring the clients that I work with in dentistry to have the confidence, the capability, and the consistency to become the market leaders in their field. And I'm already working with market leading industry, dental kind of giants, if you like. I'm really looking forward to helping my dental professional network to do the same, to really become market leaders, not just from their clinical practice, but from their business practice. Here's just some information about some of the companies I'm working with. This is information about me. If anybody would like to get in touch with me directly, please feel free. So all of my contact details are on here. You can check out the website. You can connect me on Linktree if anybody uses Linktree. All of my social channels are on there. So do feel free to connect with me directly. I'll be very happy to have a conversation with you or to just be part of your network. So that brings us to the end of our session. Chris, I would love to hear questions if we have any. If anybody wants to put questions in the chat, please feel free to do so.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much, Justin. I think equally with the questions, because of the numbers that we have here, maybe you could ask it directly if you wanted to unmute yourself. We could work that through. I've got a couple of questions that have come through while I've been on. And you know, firstly, I completely agree with you about having systems. You know, we have that in place, and they make so much sense. But there's been a one here from someone, and they've gone, for someone starting out, should I focus on staff systems or patient systems first? I think that's a great question.
That is a great question. Yeah.
Where do you start?
So for me, you have to always put the patient at the heart of everything. Okay. So if the patient experience isn't optimal or isn't as good as it can be from the start, you're going to struggle. So I'd always put the patient first. That patient system, what is it like for the patient? How do we make sure they get the optimal experience? That first, then you can get the team to align with that patient experience, because that is going to guide what you do with your staff system and structure anyway. That would be my advice.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And there's another one here as well, and I know you've kind of partly covered it, so it is within the webinar, but do you have any tips for when you have a difficult person who is not listening?
Yes.
We all have them, and I know I had one today, and I'm just like, will you just shut up and listen? and they wouldn't take, nothing went into their head at all. So I can completely understand where this question's coming from.
So if you've got someone that doesn't listen, one of the things that I do is, so there's a couple of things. One is to make sure that if somebody's not listening, normally it means that they're also talking a lot, right? And their own talking tends to prevent them from listening. So one of the things to do is to ask them closed questions. So I talked about the open question structure, what or how. With somebody who you want to get either, you know, refined and to the point, start to ask them more closed questions. So kind of, do you think this, or can you confirm that, or are you able to tell me this, or, you know, really shorten things down. The second thing to do is to start to create some pauses. So when somebody doesn't listen, when they stop, that's a perfect opportunity to just create some silence. And we haven't gone into the importance of silence in listening, but when we start to create silence, generally speaking, the other person starts to feel a little bit uncomfortable. And that's a good thing, right? Because sometimes we have to nurture that discomfort. And if we can get used to creating some of that space ourselves, what happens is that people's processing starts to improve. They start to have this space to work through what's going on in their mind. And so if someone else isn't listening, by actually creating some space and pausing, you'll almost force the gap. And in that gap, you create the opportunity to listen. Or just spend less time. Just spend less time with them.
That's a fantastic tip. I think I will try that next time I have a problematic person. Yeah, close question and pause.
Yeah, yeah. Honestly, it works. Works a treat.
Brilliant, brilliant. Yeah, no, it's all. Do we have any questions from anybody? If you want to unmute yourself and ask Justin a question. They're all flying in here. I have a one for you. This is really with regards to body language.
Yes.
Now, we're kind of always taught, you know, to have empathetic body language, to be sitting at eye level with the patient and all this sort of stuff. But is there a simple no-no and a simple must-do?
Yes. So in terms of really straightforward, fairly obvious stuff, one of the things that people do for comfort's sake is they fold their arms. And so, you know, we'll end up in a conversation with someone, especially if we're sitting, it becomes quite awkward to know what to do with your arms. So we fold them. Okay. And in folding the arms, we immediately unconsciously create a barrier with the other person. So one of the things I recommend is just making sure that you're constantly aware of maintaining open body language, so that your arms are never folded, they're never in front of you to create a physical barrier between you and the other person. And remember, so much of our connection with somebody else is unconscious, that it means that we have to really focus in on the things that are going to be going through the other person's mind at an unconscious level and the things they're sensing. So I've retrained myself. I very rarely fold my arms. And even when I'm standing, I'll make sure that my arms are by my side so that I don't do this. And interestingly, I don't know if the listeners know this, but one of the reasons we fold our arms, there's two reasons. One is for comfort. So we actually physically, it's almost like we're embracing ourselves, we're holding ourselves. If we feel a bit anxious, we'll cross our arms because it makes us feel better. But we don't actually need to do it to feel better. The other thing it does is it actually it feels comfortable. So we'll fold our arms because it's a comfortable feeling. And actually, when you recondition yourself to go from every time you do it, you think, no, don't do that, put my arms by my side and rest them, you know, gently by your side, it actually creates much greater openness and a much better connection with the other person.
Great, no, that's helpful, thanks.
Pleasure.
Justin, I have a quick question actually following on from that.
Yeah. Hi, Shamik. Yeah.
Thanks for a great presentation. Really, really good. I really enjoyed that. Again, would you recommend doing your solutions discussion and your proposals in the treatment room, or would you recommend just having a total separate room with just a desk and some props and a computer and stuff, total non-dental environment, or does it not make a difference?
I think it depends whether or not you've got the space, Shamik. So if you've got the space to do it somewhere else, and you can create that different environment from, you know, where you're treating the patient, then great. If you can't, then I would start to think about just making sure that when you have the conversation, you know, you're in the right position so that the patient can read your body language. You know, you're not behind the spittoon or another part of dental equipment in the surgery. Make sure that there is really good open space between you. Make sure that, you know, things are out of the way so that the patient's not distracted or thinking about anything else. I don't think it's a prerequisite. I wouldn't say you had to be somewhere else. Yes, it could be advantageous, but there are other things that you can do that just make sure the communication flows more effectively.
Excellent. Thanks.
Pleasure. Thanks for the question, Shamik. Appreciate it.
I think that's a great question, Sham. Thanks. And we set up a Scott practice a few years ago that was focusing very much on kind of high-end cosmetic implant stuff. And one of the things we did was have a dedicated kind of consultation room. And without a shadow of a doubt, we've got another practice which is a generalist practice, and this one with the dedicated room. The dedicated room, it works unbelievably well, and I think exactly as you say, it's showing the person the kind of the empathy, that you're listening, that you're taking their points on board. So if you do have room as a BACD member, to other BACD members here, if you have a small room in your practice that you can utilize, do it, because it really that's for us, that's the biggest feedback that we've had from patients as to why they bought into our treatments, because no one else does it.
That's great.
They sit, as you say, Justin, over the spittoon, chatting to you, trying to sell you a £10,000 treatment.
Yes, that's the only danger. If you can create that space in the surgery, but you have to do it intentionally. I think that's the thing. And you're right, Chris. If you've got the luxury of being able to have a specialist consultation room, that is absolutely brilliant. But I guess, thinking practically, not everybody has that facility, unfortunately.
I completely understand.
Yeah, I'm losing one of the rooms at the moment, which turning it into a hygiene room, and I'm trying to see, and I'm going to miss it. So I'm going to have to try and sort something else out, actually.
Just take them out for a drive, mate. Justin, we've got another question here. Your course sounds very interesting. And is your course beneficial for associates, or is it mainly for principals and the team?
So for me, it's anybody who is communicating with patients, wants to improve that ability to communicate, influence, and effectively, consultatively sell and build your private offering. So associates, absolutely. Yeah, if you're treating patients, it's definitely going to benefit you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you.
Great. We'll kind of come up to just over the hour. We won't keep you. This has been fantastic webinar tonight. Thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure.
This sort of stuff I find really intriguing and really interesting. It's stuff that all the bits and bobs that you say, it's really good to hear. I know we hear them every so often, but it's really good to kind of reassure and reaffirm, because you do let these things slip. And yes. I sort of already 2 circumstances today, I crossed my arms. So I've got it right, hands in pocket, hands behind me, something like this. So it's really, really good. And I think for all dentists, I think this is an essential skill that we're not taught at uni at all, and it is the prerequisite. You can't even get on with dentistry unless you have that relationship and that trust, and that's all built through exactly everything that you've been talking about, Justin. So thank you very much. If I could just reiterate with everybody that this session is recorded. There was a lot of really good information that was coming out there, and like you were saying, I was writing quite a bit down, and I'd love to go back and have a look. So the webinar will be uploaded onto the website through the webinar dashboard, which is access for members only. And also, if you would like a copy of the PDF in a PDF version of today's presentation, then Justin has kindly forwarded that, and you can get that from Susie. So if you email Susie, again, it will have all the information of how to contact Justin for his course, which sounds absolutely amazing, in September. And it's all online courses, is that right? Looking at what it was there?
Yeah. All on Zoom. Yes, all on Zoom. And
right.
A bit like this webinar this evening, Chris, it'll all be recorded, and people will have access to be able to go back and look at the content as well. So, and there'll be an opportunity for us, as we've done, open questions, make sure that we get the chance to talk specifically about the topics that are meaningful to each participant.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you very much for your time, Justin. It's
pleasure.
Absolutely been brilliant. BACD are very thankful and grateful for your input this evening.
Thank you, Chris.
And I know that everyone is going to go into practice tomorrow and be thinking a little bit differently and realigned. I know I will be, definitely. And that's fantastic. Super.
Brilliant. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, everybody.
Justin. Thanks.
Pleasure, Sham. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.
See you soon. Thanks a lot. Bye.